But Justin, kudos to you for taking the topic that you did. Um, I don't have to tell you the amount of experience that's already logged into this town hall. So if they're not pushing back and challenging and conversing, and then I'll just de-admit them. We'll just get it down to the people who want to play nicely. So,
Perfect.
but it's a
Read my
it's a
mind.
it's a good group of people with a lot of experience. So again, I joke, but I encourage you all to, as always, please jump in and help Justin along. It's a discussion. It's not a monologue. Um, I'm assuming, since I know everyone that's on here, that nearly everybody, if not everyone, knows Justin. I first met Justin when you were with Hershey's,
Yeah.
and I think you were what, about 18? That was a long time ago.
I wish. I wish. Yeah, close to that. Close to
Yeah,
that.
full head of hair,
Yeah.
spry,
Yeah. Yeah.
unmarried. Um, but since then, I know that Justin's been doing, so much for the industry and traveling around and visiting with people. And so when he takes a topic like this, I can assure you he's taking it from a lot of input he's received from a lot of people over the course of his travels in the last 12 to 24 months. So again, kudos to you for taking on. I didn't see the letters AI in your title, so maybe my copy didn't print right, but
Huh.
also appreciated. So thank you for that. Hey, can you flip to the next slide, Justin?
You got it.
If you don't know Casey, if you don't follow Casey and Greg on LinkedIn, you should. But they've been trumpeting our upcoming regional networking event in Atlanta, scheduled for next week on Thursday. So if not you, and I know John, sometimes Blue Cross and Blue Shield will send a few people over. So feel free to do that if time permits and schedules permit. But it'll be a good session, a really good session. So we welcome you to join us if you can. My game plan is to be there for a while as well, so should be a lot of fun. And then, Lon, you have another scheduled part three of the series you want to share real quick?
Yeah, just real quick, kudos to Vicky Brackett for putting together a three-part series on knowledge management for us. And part three is going to be on March 4th. So we're looking forward to that. And again, thank you, Vicky.
Yep. Thank you, Vicky, very, very much. Okay, Justin, before I turn it over to you, a couple of embarrassing comments. You know, your experience in leadership and CX. Certainly, I mentioned Hershey's. Your role there was reservations, head of reservations. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I started in the reservation contact center.
And when you were there, how small, at its smallest point, how small was that?
In our off season, we had 35 full-time associates.
And at peak?
We were about 100.
Okay. So that just gives you a pretty good idea of where he cut his teeth. At 35, workforce management kind of looks like, yeah, they're here, right? So it's not overly difficult. But I know from listening to you and also reading some of your content that the core, the foundation of all of this is the customer and and serving that customer. So we can wrap it under leadership or customer experience. 20 plus years in your background leads you to be called an expert in this area, and I know a lot of people pay a lot of attention to what you have to say. So again, thank you for tackling this. Metric Sherpa is the company, and I'm sure the credentials will be provided to you at some point. If not, it'll be in the chat. So, Justin, thank you. Let me turn it over to you to get us started.
Awesome, David. Thank you. It is so fun to see familiar faces and some new ones, and appreciate just the opportunity to spend a little bit of a Thursday afternoon with all of you. It's been an interesting season for me over the last few years because I don't know if any of you have ever kind of stopped to notice, is there a common thread that's moving through your story, the work that you do, the things that you pay attention to, the things that kind of give you a little bit of nudging in terms of I want to do something about this, and what does this look like? And that's kind of the season that I've been in, and it's really been centered around work design. And what I'd say is this important question of are we actually designing work that works against us? And what I want to have a conversation about this afternoon and share some of what I've been watching, what I've been researching, what I've been building is actually around system design and how do we identify, build, and enable a structure in which the work that we do has has focus, has intentionality, and it's not victim to compromise and trade-off. That's kind of what's been flying around in my head if I were to kind of put this honestly, because what my observation has been is that for most of our businesses, we are sitting in this really weird place where our people can actually handle more work. They can handle intensity, but what we cannot sustain is an environment and a workplace of confusion. And when confusion starts to multiply in the way that we do work, everybody loses. And to the point of where I want to start it, it actually I think is the number one thing that's draining all of us. What this has looked like for me from a contact center standpoint is things like nothing new to most of the folks that I'm seeing here. It's when we have competing metrics and we leave it up to people to figure out what actually has to win in the moment, or what's going to be the thing that gets rewarded or recognized in that day. It's the places where we start to be under stress as an environment and we start to give way to standards, maybe in a moment or at an individual level, but we start to compromise on what we say actually matters most. Or maybe it's things like just not doing coaching during peak periods of time. And this is stuff even from my own observation. During high volume weeks, I watch contact centers where there's 25, 50% or more reduction in the conversations that leaders are having with their people. And this I believe is at the root of what is really putting pressure on our organizations. It's not people who are emotionally burnt out. It is an organization that is structurally kind of compressing down on itself. And maybe to help all of us think about this in a moment, I know some of you that I'm seeing you don't run contact centers, and so put this in context of your work. But if you think about the busiest week that you had in the last quarter, what would you say is the thing that got compromised the most during that week? The busiest week that you had in the last quarter, what's the thing that you had to compromise on?
Justin, I'll jump in. I think you're bringing up an awesome point because when everything gets busy, and I'll just use an example I had with a company I was working with or before, and when things get super busy, the biggest things that go away are kind of engagement activities, communication, because everybody's too busy. So, example, I held a summer summit every year, which was a really great way to reconnect, celebrate, and set strategy for the following year, engaging everybody in the company that we did that. That my boss asked me to cancel that because we were too busy. We were putting in a new CRM, right? Communication and one-on-ones go down because they don't have time for them anymore because they're just busy, right? Everybody's on the phone and everybody needs to, take the work seriously on volume. But what's really interesting is when it's the most busiest, and I think you're probably going to make this point, is when we need that stuff the most. is really a key piece.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Adam, where I had a mentor once who talked about our intentional pre-decisions, and the whole gist is when we find ourselves in those moments, muscle memory and reflex kicks in, And so, how do we make intentional pre-decisions so that when we are under pressure, when we have to make trade-offs, we know what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how it all plays out. And this is absolutely about that. It's about how do we again design work in a way that actually works for us, not against us, because this is, I think, affecting every single one of us, not even just from a contact center standpoint. Every single person I think is being affected by this in one way or another. What's another busiest period of the last quarter? What's one thing that for sure was a trade-off that had to be given up at the sake of whatever that demand was driving?
Cross training or upskill training.
Yeah, absolutely. Training is one of those items where it feels like a nice to have, not need in this moment, especially if we've got kind of crises going on around us and this urgent mode that we're operating out of. It's easy to see that thing as the thing that won't matter. So, yeah, I think we all can probably name something or multiple somethings, and what I have discovered and what we're going to talk about is what is the damage that misalignment actually does. Because that is the thing that's undermining our organizations. That's the thing that if we start first there, connecting our promises to our practices, we will discover that not only does work happen more predictably, but all of our people are able to understand and step in with a level of clarity and confidence that we all want, and we're conditioned to not believe, to not trust it because of the way that work's been designed. I know that some of you we've not had the opportunity to meet before. David talked a little bit about my background. Super quick, if you want to get connected and have questions after the fact, lots of ways. I'm in the Slack group. You can get my email address, phone number, anything there. Started Metric Sherpa about 2 years ago, really to continue to research, understand, and serve how organizations design and deliver their experiences. More recently, a lot of my focus is what are our senior leaders promising to deliver inside of their organizations, and what do their practices actually allow. And that's kind of coming to bear within a resource I'll talk a little bit more about. That's coming here on March 5th. What this question is really about, and I'm gonna burden all of us with this, but the question for me that I've been wrestling through this time is, where does leadership intention fail to translate into our operational reality? One of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou, and it goes like this: "People will judge you by your actions, not your intentions. You may have a heart of gold, but so does a hard-boiled egg." And what I'm hoping to show are some things that we can do to better align our intentions with what's actually playing out in our operation. And I want to start here. I want to start with the lens that we are all using when we are designing this. And I don't care if you are a team of 100, or 1,000. We all, as leaders, think about our culture from two standpoints. One is the value statements that we put into the world. It might be our mission, vision, core values if we have them. It might be a service promise. It might be any of those types of phrases, mottos, however you want to think about it. And look, this is when I interviewed leaders about this. Hey, we've put it out. We talk about it in the meetings. It's on the back of the name badges that people have. It's part of our annual evaluation, and the general belief is that what we value as an organization is clear. It's communicated out there. It's made public, and it's accessible. And so for most of us as leaders, our perception of our culture is really based around our intention and the work that we think we've done to put it into the world. But when you interview people as employees of those environments, and this applies again to any single one of us, what does culture actually end up looking like? What substantiates it for organizations? Well, it gets measured by things like what actually am I being held accountable for on a daily basis? What are the things that I watch that we just suddenly pause doing in this moment? What are the things that get subtly rewarded or maybe not so subtly? It's maybe I had a conversation with my leader and they said, you know what, empathy really matters a lot to us. We're spending time on developing your ability to be empathetic, and yet when I look at the dashboards and the way that we're communicating, keeping score, I'm still seeing things like average handle time or speed and time pushed in front of me that feels like it's in conflict with it. Or maybe again, we say that development really matters a lot for us, but we've all experienced it get canceled during big peak periods, and so it really feels like it's survival of the fittest. Like that's that's culture lived out. And for a lot of people, if you ask them to actually name what their culture is like, and compare it to the values that they have in place, it's a total contrast here. I mean, let's do this gut check for a minute. If you think about your own dashboards right now, what do you believe that you are rewarding and you are acknowledging more aggressively? Are you rewarding and acknowledging and highlighting speed or discernment? What's the take? What's the thing that if I look at the board, what's getting surfaced?
Well, there's the KPI, Justin, and then there's also what's happening. Are you getting recognized more for the things you're doing well, or is most of the time the engagement you're getting from leadership for things that, you're not necessarily that good at?
Yeah.
Or what
Greg,
should be what's the right balance?
yeah, and I think that the question actually gets a little bit deeper than there's the KPI and then there's the things that you're doing. Why aren't the things that you're doing the KPI?
Well, that's the difference between behaviors and KPIs, and depends on how you define KPI. We look at them as leading indicators or lagging indicators, right? So most people focus on outcomes, right? But really, you don't have to pay attention to outcomes as long as you're really focused on the behaviors that produce the outcomes, the leading indicators. So we codify those in what we call process scorecards versus outcome scorecards,
Well,
right?
I think you have to pay attention to both. I mean, it's like a football game. You can during the week you're going to practice doing the blocking, doing running the right play, running the right route, and you can do all that. That's where you get better and make progress, or you don't make progress. But at the end of the day, you still need to keep score when the game's played. So at the end of the day, if I'm a CEO, I do need to know what my average handle time is, what my conversion rates were for sales, what my total revenue was, what the costs that I have. So I think you absolutely need both. Certainly, the lagging indicators are of a reflection of the driving indicators, like Greg said, but I think both are important.
Yeah, and so let's stop and do the reality check here for a second, because I think in theory what we've said is beautiful, but the reality is for most contact center leaders, they're playing the game every day. They're not doing practice during the week. It's after, and love the organizations where they are leading and predictive and proactive in the behaviors. Reality is for most organizations that's not the place where they're living in, right? And so what they're seeing and what they're hearing feels like that constant state of I'm running, and there's no moment for me to actually stop and learn how do I build that muscle memory. It's all reflex, right? I think that's part of it. And to your point, Casey, they absolutely do matter. And the challenge I think is we're actually forsaking some of those board level metrics for a bunch of behind the scenes bleed out, right? Because we haven't been intentional about actually understanding the impact of, hey, it's just today that we've got to buckle down and do this. But when just today becomes every day, that's a recipe for disaster. And for a lot of organizations, that is reality.
And Justin, you're sort of touching on this, and I love the conversation. But when I look at your first slide about exhaustion, one of the realities is that exhaustion often accelerates when these agents feel micromanaged or unsupported. So when leaders are controlling performance frameworks, whether the metrics are efficiency driven, like AHT adherence, when they're not really balanced with the judgment, empowerment, and purpose. So the CEO cares about the outcome of judgment, empowerment, and purpose, but doesn't care about the metrics that define whether or not we're effective at doing that. They'll see the lagging indicators of turnover and burnout and lower CSATs. But the reality is it, as we're saying, it really is both.
Yeah, and John, one of the phrases that has kind of been sitting with me a lot lately, because I believe a lot of especially contact center operations leaders are underestimated or undervalued in their impact on the rest of the business. And I think one of the biggest opportunities is to, in a lot of ways, feel like a Rosetta Stone. So to your point, there's these components that at the ground floor of the operation are going to matter and need to be put into practice. And then every time we're moving further from that, it iterates. And if you, as that operations leader, don't have an understanding of, what's the language that you need to use in making this relevant and meaningful to your people, and then translating that into how it's going to affect the business of the business, that, I mean, that's a whole other topic. And it's really about relevance and understanding how what you do every day affects the larger organization for sure.
Yeah, Justin, the other thing I'd add is just the difference between the what's and the hows. The focus on, is it on the numbers, is it on the behaviors? I don't think the numbers are the enemy here, but the numbers should be the thermometer. The focus with our employees should be on the behaviors, the competencies that drive the outcomes. And if we focus on those rather than the rep chasing the number, it changes that experience for your employee and allows you to focus on the things that actually drive the outcomes.
It does. And fully agree with you there. And I think the reality of this is based off of, so this was over kind of several thousand interviews that was really looking at like what's playing out. Again, the way organizations position and couch this, and then how it is actually interpreted and acted on by our people. And most are rational and sober minded and understand why that higher level KPI needs to exist and how it needs to be reported on. But what feels like is happening is that the reality of work is being forsaken to get to that number and do whatever it takes at all costs, right? That's part of the tension point here of how is that motion of what we're doing in the short term actually affecting us, in the long term, in terms of how people are at work. I mean, there's a very real problem right now, not even in the contact center, where people are feeling apathetic and disconnected and undervalued in what they do. They didn't start that way. They joined that organization because they were passionate probably about the problem. They were, well aligned to the mission. And so what was the thing that slowly dripped and eroded their confidence in that? And it is this disconnect between here's what we say is important, but then here's how work happens. That, beyond the metrics that we're using, that to me is one of the biggest things that's harming teams right now from what I've been seeing. So if we think about what this actually means, it's not even a big, it's not one big moment that's actually harming how this is playing out for our organizations. This is actually really, really small, but happening consistently and at incredible scale. Lots of little contradictions. This is what's starting to undermine what we're doing here. And I think any single one of us would agree that, hey, if I just have a single trade-off that I have to make, that's incredibly manageable for me. But if you look at what actually happens inside of our minds and bodies beyond just showing up, but the cognitive fatigue that happens to anyone who every day they have unresolved trade-offs that they are working within, it's no surprise why this work has and continues to be one of the places where a lack of engagement and disconnection exists, right? Maybe, and look, I'm even guilty of this at time where it's like, you have an employee who it's like, hey, you're just taking too much time in this, and we're vague and we're speaking in generalizations with them. It's like, hey, you're just taking too much time in this situation, and we need to clean some time up somewhere. Well, maybe they were also, had a situation that where they weren't resolving deeply enough. Right. And for some of us, we have the time and experience where we're like, no, we're not going to do that. Most people who are having these conversations, that's not where it is. They've got a million things competing for time and attention. And so there's all of these conflicts that are happening, and this tension in how varied I feel like the work is, and how often it's coming back to supervisors or being escalated. Right, so much of it is actually coming down to conflicting expectations more than anything else. And that's actually one of the things I'm curious, if you think about, for those of you that are running contact centers and you look at your escalations last month, how many of them were actually tied to conflicting expectations? Maybe one thing was promised by one team, but then something else happened, or hey, I thought it was this way, but it's actually that way.
A lot of nodding heads, Justin. It's like, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think
If you look at it, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say one thing. I mean, I love your top. I love what you're saying. And I love your slant on this, because I call it culture versus climate. What we kind of say we want versus what we actually deliver in our interactions and our individual moments is, sometimes so contradictory. And one of the things I just would add to the discussion is the consistency or lack thereof amongst managers. So one manager may be awesome and everybody wants to work for that guy, right? Or that gal. And then the other one is like nobody wants to be on that person's team, right? Because the climate that they're creating is not aligned with the culture you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, and even again, so for me, my biggest thing that I've observed and then have since validated, even about what you talk about, Adam, is there are environments that are incredibly left up to chance of the training of that particular manager, or not the process that exists or not. And for me, this isn't about like more programs or training, but it's like, what is the actual structural undercarriage of how we're creating work? Because that's what's bringing this out. And here's again, if we think about this example we talked about even at the beginning, so if you were to think about tomorrow, you walk in, volume spikes 20%. What's the thing that you would name that breaks first? Right? That's part of the tension of this. What's the trade-off? And depending on your team, I'm gonna guess for some of us, trying to think about what are compromises that I've made. It might be, coaching. We heard that earlier. We might see that. We know that if volume goes up, escalations are also going to go up, because we're going to have people who get distracted by the queue. They start rushing through things, creates a whole bunch of problems. Or maybe it's like, hey, we've got to do what we can to hit service level. So we're just going to have people. We're going to trim off that after call work. We're going to trim off that downtime. We're just going to do what we can to get people moving faster through. Maybe we just have a plan built in that we're like, that's fine. We're just gonna approve overtime. When volume goes up, again, did this over kind of a time trial on like what's actually happening. What are the metrics that are breaking? Saw that volume goes up. It's rarely service level that was getting affected, because we make a way, and sometimes because you're financially required to, because we just don't want to take the heat, and so we'll do whatever we need to get to that number. Revenue targets, if it's, of course, if you're 20% up and it's all people wanting to buy more, that's a great problem to have. Still a problem though. But what it means when we look at the things that actually break, what it means is that for most organizations, their systems are built to protect the KPIs over the people. We inherently know this, but that playing out time after time, no surprise, it's compounding attrition risk. No surprise, it's causing people to become apathetic. So the more that I was living this as an operator, watching it play out, researching the topic, I really started asking the question of like, so what do we do differently? Because this is not a new problem. So what is a way to think about this to actually give us the structure that I feel like organizations don't adopt, don't think about, don't know where to get started. Uh, and for me, before I was a contact center guy, I was a drummer, started drumming at the age of 5. Love music still to this day. But for me, one of the things that I realized I naturally look for in the world around me are places where rhythm happens. And I started asking the question of what does it look like in operational terms for us to be better in rhythm with what we want to play out. And it's again, it was trying to help me kind of think of what this actually looks like. But I kind of boil it down, at least for the sake of our conversation today, of four big things that I think are key for any single one of us. If we're recognizing that we're making those trade-offs, or we're recognizing that things are breaking or people are disconnecting, it's what's even one thing that we can get started with to help stabilize that. And for me, one of the first things is setting clear priorities, and this might be actually not saying that we're going to do this, but actually doing this, ensuring that our coaching cadence, the way that we're providing that to our team, stays consistent, that we align to our commitments, and if we can't, that we make a shift in a meaningful way. It's having standards that actually see and feel stable to people. They don't feel like they're unclear or that they're shifting or that they're in conflict with each other. It's not just recognizing people when they go above and beyond, or giving them time and attention when they need development or support or refocus, but making the way that we engage and acknowledge what's happening with our people in something that's predictable and consistent. And it's also recognizing that we cannot blow past recovery, especially in the work that so many of our teams do. When that happens, everything else will inevitably fall apart. And having to set across from an executive when you've got the pressure of a service level or needing to meet objectives and recognizing that something has to give, we've got to figure out how we can get to the place where what doesn't give every day is our people, because otherwise we're just going to churn and burn through them and never actually improve those other things down the line. If you think about these, even in the last kind of surge that you had, what do you feel was the one that stayed most consistent for you? Is it understanding what's most important? Is it keeping the standard, acknowledging how people were stepping up, giving people downtime? What's the thing that's most consistent for you when there's a surge? None of it. It all goes sideways.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Justin. You know, for me, having gone through this many, many times in a lot of different companies, one of the things that I've found from a consistency perspective is that, when things are really crazy in today's world, things are really crazy. I think we can all admit that, right? I mean, lots of stuff going on in lots of ways. And everything you're talking about here, I think, is the key to creating that consistency and, kind of helping employees connect with that in a really unstable world. So it creates stability in an unstable world when you do these things and you focus on the culture. And it's, I always like to say, you know, the world's always going to change. That's how we improve and how we get better. But how we approach the world together, that shouldn't change because that should be based off our culture.
Yeah, I like Adam your comment about together. I think the key for successful organizations is one, you have a plan. Typically, you have a workforce playbook. If this, then this. Here are the levers we have to pull. We can change our call handling criteria. Maybe there's some things that we do to educate customers on self-help that we cut out. Maybe there's some other things in a pinch that we don't require our staff to execute. Maybe there's flex capacity from different groups that we can pull forward. Maybe there's certain trainings that we can reschedule. There's a whole list of things you can do. I think the key is in one, you have that playbook, but two, you communicate with your team. Your team understands the playbook. They understand how the organization is going to rally because they feel the pain more than anybody. They're the ones getting crunched. And so when they know, here are the things we're doing to try to weather the storm, and here's how we're going to, on the back end, recuperate and support this. And then back to your comments from before, do what you say you're going to do. It's the actions versus words. When you follow through and you keep the lines of communication open, that's where you build trust. That's where you build, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but the security for people, they don't feel squashed because they know the organization is aware of what's going on. They have a plan and they're rallying to support them.
And JR, that resonates with me. I think all those points are critically important. I think one of the challenges, if you're in an organization where you are constantly going to that playbook, you have a different problem.
Yes.
Should be able to manage those short-term spikes. I remember an old saying that if your ox is in the mire, you go to the playbook. Then I had heard somebody once say, if your ox is frequently in the mire, you either need to fill in the mire or sell the ox. So I think the question is, if we're going to that playbook frequently, we're eroding trust, and they're asking who is in charge here? Why do we keep having all hands on deck? What's
Yes.
going on? There's something more fundamental here going on that we need to take a look at from a leadership perspective.
That's
Amen.
that's the thing. There's the how do you have the plan, and then understanding when the plan goes sideways, what that looks like. Kind of to the point of this. So as I was digging deeper into this, really saw that there were kind of four big places where strain can happen, and I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit specifically, but some of them we've hit on. So we'll just reinforce a little bit of what we've identified, but those four kind of bits of strain, they all map to measurable behavior. And these are all things that kind of are byproducts of how we design work, again, intentionally or not. I want to talk for a minute about clarity. We're going to look at intentionality. We're going to talk about connection, and then we're going to talk about recovery. And the first bit there is on that clarity strain, and this is really about the conflict of priorities. So, as an example, one of the things I was noticing when I was looking at, we're going to talk about supervisors, as the example here. When I was looking at some of the supervisor scorecards, and their kind of core set of KPIs, was seeing on average somewhere landing between four to six KPIs. But there was no real hierarchy or organization to when one really has to win. What does that look like? How do we have that conversation? So no kind of written rules if we think about it in terms of when we're under pressure or when we need to make some decisions. What does that look like? And so the result is, and we've probably all seen this, different supervisors, different people are going to prioritize different metrics at different times. There's no consistency there. And so if I'm on Casey's team, maybe I see there's one response when service level drops below 80%, versus if I'm on Greg's team, there's a totally different way that he might handle that situation, right? So there's inconsistency there. An approach. So give a quick example of what would it look like to do this differently. It could be as simple as hey, if we are in that situation where AHT falls below whatever the threshold, or service level falls below whatever that threshold is going to be. In those moments, if we're often fixated on if it's average handle time, that's really going to become secondary to us in that moment, and maybe that's where we shift next. Or hey, we're going to be really intentional about how we're escalating in that moment, and we're going to be moving this work through these people in this way. It may even be as simple as, hey, coaching blocks that are happening there, like we're not going to move them in that. So it's like these are the things that we know we're going to manipulate. We might have, more things that are getting kind of, rolled to this group of people, but it's because we've recognized we have to protect another group or another kind of block of work or whatever it might be, right? So just kind of some of those pre-decisions there, and a lot of ways that this can show up, and we'll look at some more examples in a minute. But intentionality then, thinking about that second one, this is when we are canceling calibration sessions. This is when we're dropping the frequency of coaching. This might even be when, hey, Vicky's one of our best people. We can let some of those things slide right now. Maybe it's not perfect, but we know Vicky knows better, so we're gonna let her get away with it, right? That's all seen and observed by the rest of our people, and has effect on them. So it's saying, hey, what are some of the non-negotiables? And if we're going to use calibration as the example, it's like, hey, this happens every day at this time. Unless the building is on fire or there's an incredible crisis, this is part of what we're going to commit to, right? So it's again saying what we're going to do, and then being able to understand what won't we compromise on, and then more importantly, to the point of communication, if and when we have to compromise, we have a clear lens to say, yeah, this is why we're willing to make this trade-off, and here's the result that it's going to have. Everybody understands the consequence. We don't feel like it's haphazard. These start to build, and kind of the third place where maybe some strain is happening is certainly from the standpoint of connection. And it was one of the heaviest parts of really digging into this topic more, and talking to a bunch of people, even some really smart, really high capacity people, was the amount of folks who were just kind of slowly willing to do less, recognizing that they were stepping kind of back, and just going through the motions of what needs to be done. And it's because they felt their recognition for contribution was moving in the right places. They felt like they're not actually getting acknowledged for the times that they're stepping in. One of the biggest ones was looking at employees who, to me, they were a lot of the we think about those fallback plans. So these were actually the folks for when things are broken, they actually step in and get something done. And they said nobody ever acknowledges when to actually prevent escalations from happening around here. And so that's one I'm actually curious of. Like you've probably got those people that have come to the rescue. They're the ones that when things go sideways, you can always tap them on the shoulder. When was the last time that you spent time recognizing, hey, who's actually helping us patch the gaps, because we have gaps, and these are the people stepping up? Just curious, anybody intentional about saying, hey, we know we have some places where work doesn't happen the way it should, and we acknowledge and engage those folks who help us get there?
If you're not, you have to be. Those are the most important. That's the most important type of KPI to track, right? So you got to figure out a way to do that, like consistently, and like you said, the more busy and hectic it is, where things start to slip through the cracks, the more important it is to do those things. I mean, this is a great topic, and JR, appreciate you, like I said in the chat, coming to the rescue, because there's a lot of worry from very underlying huge reasons with AI and everything else about our industry these days. But if you can kind of see through the smoke to the other side, it's actually a much better place than where we are today, because all of these issues that we're talking about can be very significantly remedied through AI. And this isn't the call to talk about how that is. I'm happy to talk to anybody about those things, not because it's something I sell or don't sell, just because, we're in the know in the market, right? We see what the technology's out there and who's doing what. And hell, I just got done like Vicky Brackett and probably some of the others on this call, reviewing 100 or so Stevie Award, entries too. So you see the success stories that people are talking about. And where's the things that are really proving out to work there. And a lot of it's pretty low hanging fruit. But at the end of the day, it is meaningfully addressing these friction points, stress points, these components that are, that cause these periods of time when things fall through the cracks. And I think that's going to get better and better. And then there's other things that are probably less paid attention to, very biased on game mechanics. And it's something that's near and dear to me, from the standpoint of how it brings different stakeholders, or can, in the organization, that don't have an opportunity to come together. Because when it comes to recognition and things like this, and I also mentioned this in the chat, is that like what's the breadth of engagement that you have? Is it really just the responsibility of the supervisor to sort of boost the morale of the agent, and that's the whole universe, if at all? These people are working at home, they're working in their cubicles, they're very siloed. The only interactions they have, if you don't have AI taking care of the low-hanging fruit, is getting pummeled by crummy people calling in that aren't at their best because they're not in a good mood for whatever reason they're calling for. Get rid of all that stuff so the stress down. But again, on the game mechanics side, and it's a terrible term, but really all they're doing, it's just ways to connect people and ways to sort of reinforce that most of the responsibility is being put on the supervisor, and spread it out to other leadership in the organization and make it fun to do. So I think that and again, JR kicked this off, Stricker, how do you resolve all of these things? There are a lot of tools in our toolkits that are advancing and developing. Some of them are been around for a long time, and some of them are newer, that can, if you're intentional and you're really thoughtful about these things, can really resolve a lot of these issues very, very meaningfully, if you implement them.
Sure. Yeah, and it really does come down to there's how are we designing it, and then how are we enabling that design to come to life, and that can be through process and technology and all of those things. And the last kind of point of strain is not going to be unfamiliar to any of us, but this is certainly one of the biggest triggers that was coming up as we were talking. Is most contact centers that I ended up looking at through the research were understaffed. That was just the reality of where they're at. And so recovery strain for them is real, because what should be the exception is certainly the norm from an urgency standpoint, with high levels of occupancy, no real time for decompression, and just overall we'll say a compounding load and burden, not just on the frontline associates, but on their supervisors, and frankly on the leaders of those leaders. And so all of those things compounding together, really is what starts to work against every single one of us and every single one of our people, on whether they're not there, or whether or not they're feeling that the work is connecting to the things that matters most, and what we say we're trying to accomplish as an organization. And what I'll do for a quick minute here is I'll kind of gut check where we're at, and I'll put this poll out for a second. But if you think about those four sources of strain, even from your own kind of time and experience, which one do you feel is the kind of the greatest one here? Is it clarity around what matters most, what needs to win, intentional in terms of the trade-offs that we're making, ensuring that people are feeling like their work is connected and recognized, or that we're baking in opportunity for recovery? Let me give this another couple minutes here. All right, we're gonna. Okay. Ooh, one squeak in. All right, I'm gonna close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lock in your answers. So it was interesting to see here that clarity and connection both kind of jumped out, Greg, especially as you talked about how much connection matters there. And look, if we're not clear from the onset, nothing else really matters. I give the analogy of, I think for a lot of organizations, their idea of clarity is, hey, everybody, we're gonna head west. And now I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina at the moment. So we say we all start here, and I say, hey, team, we're gonna head west. I know that some of you are gonna end up in Seattle, and some of you are gonna end up in San Diego. Very different than I say, hey, everybody, we're gonna leave Wilmington, and we need to meet at Union Square in San Francisco. We need to have a really good idea of where we're going. It's still going west, but we know the rally point. And certainly for me, clarity is one of the most important pieces for us to start with, because I think all of those other things can follow there. And yeah, David, definitely agree with you that the uncertainty of tomorrow, which has always been a thing, right? There's always the opportunity for change, and shifts, can create a lot of questions around this. Here's kind of where, as we think about these strains, and really what I think of kind of like the adversaries of us enabling to have work that works for our people, for our organization. I think we need to do a couple things, and for me, the first is to like name one of these, which we've did here a little bit. Name it, own it. On this is the thing. This is the thing that's driving strain. What's caused that to be the case? What's the decision that we made? What's the way that we designed work that's causing that? And is there something that's within your control in this moment to do just one thing, take one action against that one source of strain? Can you name that thing? And it's not a matter of, hey, we need to communicate better, right? This is something that should be time bound. It should be trigger based. It should be visible and trackable. And maybe it's as simple as, hey, we know that every supervisor, they're going to protect 90 minutes of coaching time weekly, and if we ever have to cancel it within 48 hours, it gets rescheduled, right? Committing to identifying one source of strain and making a commitment to what we can do about it. Because here's again, when I talk about this season of unsettled that I've been sitting in, what I've recognized is that for most organizations who are failing to deliver on what they aspire and want to do, which is most organizations are falling short of their expectations, it is because they have unintentionally worked against what they say matters most. If I think about this in another way, it's the way that work has been designed every single day is actually contradicting what we say we want to do. It's happening in most organizations at some scale or another. And so the question for us then becomes, what can we do about it? Go ahead. Was somebody going to say something there? Thought I heard a voice. I'm just hearing things at this point. The question really becomes, so if we can identify that source of strain, what is the thing that we can actually do about it? The first thing I want to remind us is there's a bunch of things, depending on your role in your organization, there are going to be things that are not going to be within your control. You can't affect if there was a spike in demand that wasn't related to something that you specifically did. You can't control the customer's frustration. You can't necessarily control what the board decides is going to be the most important initiative for the year, what your platforms that you use today, the constraints that they have, any of those things. What's going to happen is that you as a leader, your exhaustion is just going to go up if you focus your energy on these things that are outside of your span of control. But what you can do is think about, hey, if we've got these 6 things that we say are our key performance indicators, what has to win in this particular moment? What really is the number one thing right now? Can we put that structure into place? It's making sure that we're intentional about our time developing and engaging and coaching our workforce, and how we're escalating when it needs to happen, and how we're thinking about recognition. Right. And these become, and we've talked about putting it in writing, but these really become the rules that when we're strained in our organization that we're willing to put into place and to work against.
And Justin, maybe this is just a broad point along those lines. I think I would almost summarize it by saying that it's really the team strain and contact that the team strain and contact centers is probably more influenced by leadership design choices than by individual resilience. If you think about clarity of priorities, intentional staffing, performance expectations, meaningful connections to the purpose, structured recovery time, discipline, operational design, all those things sit within the leader's control. And when those elements are misaligned, exhaustion becomes a very predictable outcome and not a surprise.
Not a surprise, very predictable and playing out in every organization, right? And it's there. They know it, they can name it. Why haven't you done something about it? Kind of where I'll bring us home is that is the case, and we don't all have the level of authority and control to make the senior level decisions. Some of us might, but for every single one of us, we can make an intentional decision to protect one thing right now. uh, I'm gonna, as follow up, kind of put a challenge out to all of us in terms of what that commitment can look like. What is the thing that we're willing to protect? One source of strain, one action over 90 days, and that to me becomes the thing that actually starts to change the rhythm of how we do work. Kind of the point of where all of this has been getting is, you know, the stuff I start to introduce is just a fraction of the research, the design, the operating model that I've been kind of looking at over the past few years. And really the goal with all of it is this: for change to happen, we need to rewire the way that work works. Built a resource for that. If thinking through clarity in how you're delivering service, giving your team confidence in terms of the work that they're doing, and actually creating space for people to do meaningful work. If that's something you're thinking about, I want to talk more about it, because that's kind of where I've been living right now. So uh, thank you guys for some time and dialogue. I appreciate kind of throwing everything in and all the questions and comments along the way.
Thanks, Justin.
Justin, thank you so much on behalf of CCNG for running this session. A great topic. Obviously, it touched a nerve with a lot of different people, and I think it's something that we all think about, a problem worth solving. So, the recording for this session will be available, and everybody will get a link to it as soon as it gets posted. You can also get a copy of the slide deck in a PDF format. Justin has said that he will make that available to us. Thank you, Justin, so much for running the session today. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody else, for participating and your contributions. And we'll go ahead and end this now. Have everybody take care and have a good day.